All right, so we learned about the law of sines that worked for some triangles that are not right triangles. It worked for angle, angle, side. It worked for angle, side, angle. Those two produce only one triangle. And then you've got the side, side, angle that produces either 0 or 1 or 2 triangles. That's the messy one. And pause. Oh, I'll take the question. So what do you think? Are they the same thing? Yeah, you could make the argument they are, right? Because as long as you have two angles, then you could find the third angle, and then it's basically the same thing. So is that why you're asking that? Yeah. Yeah, so if you're given two angles and a side, then it qualifies under either of those. Yep, good question. All right, so we cannot solve all triangles using law of sines. So if you have like a side angle side scenario or a side 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 scenario, then you use the law of cosines. So these are the two scenarios where you'd use the law of cosines. These are the three where you'd use the law of sines. So what is the law of cosines? If I have a triangle, I'll call that A, B, C. Remember, the opposite sides are the same as the angle as far as letters go. So what you do is you need one angle. I'll just do A. So if we're going to use this angle, then we can find the opposite side from that one. So this right here, A squared, is equal to B squared plus C squared minus 2 times B times C times the cosine of A. There's a C in there. Okay, so if we have this as our angle and that's our side, we'll say the opposite side squared equals that squared plus that squared minus 2 times that times the cosine of the angle. And there's different versions. They're all the same if you think of it as opposite. So if I wanted to find C, then you'd say C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine of C. So you might have noticed that inside this law of cosines equation, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That may sound familiar to you. So it's the Pythagorean theorem. So what happens but the Pythagorean theorem only works when we have what kind of a triangle? A right triangle. So if it's a right triangle, that means the angle is 90 degrees. What is the cosine of 90 degrees? Do you remember that? Cosine of 90, what's the x value at 90? 0. So if it's 90 degrees, this whole part of the equation ends up becoming just 0. So if it's 90 degrees, then A squared plus B squared does equal C squared. So the Pythagorean theorem is actually just a special case of the law of cosines. It happens to be whenever the angle is 90 degrees, then it's just A squared plus B squared equals C squared. All right, so this will make more sense once we have an actual example. So I'll start with a side angle side example. So let's say I've got, that's clearly 10, this is 40, and we'll call this 14. So let's see if we can find out what x is. So we don't need to know A's and B's and C's, just that it's across from this angle. So then x squared equals 10 squared plus 14 squared minus 2 times 10 times 14 times the cosine of 40. So you just got to know the formula here. And then you could literally type it in. Take a minute to solve for x here. Pause it here. Alright, so I typed all those in. I hit enter, and I get 81.5. Is that what x is then? Good, we have to take the square root. That's what x squared is, and then we just take the square root of our answer, and we get 9.03. Did we get 9.03? Okay. So that's law of cosines. If you have a side, angle, side, it really doesn't get any more difficult than that. if you have the sketch drawn and you just have this, it's just knowing the formula, typing it in. Don't forget the square root. All right, so I'll have you try one. Well, you just did it, so I don't think we have to try another one. So the other scenario with cosine, or law of cosines, is the side, side, side scenario. It's a beautiful triangle. So we'll call this 20. That's clearly 22. And this one is, without a doubt, 30. All right. So why don't I find this angle, angle A. Actually, let's find angle A first. So if we know that we're solving for this angle, then 20 is the opposite one. So we can say 20 squared equals 30 squared plus 22 squared. 2 times 30 times 22 times the cosine of A. All right, so we have the equation. Now it's tempting to just combine all that stuff on the right side, but remember, this is all one term right there. So in order to solve for A, we need to get these over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 30 squared, subtract 22 squared, so whatever, 20 squared minus 30 squared minus 22 squared equals negative 2 times 30 times 22. We need to move those over to the other side. And then I would probably I'd type that in, but make sure you divide by negative 2 times 30 times 22. And that's what cosine of A is equal to. I'll give you a second to do that. Yep. You got yelled at? So did you do an inverse cosine and it yelled at you? What did you get this to be? Is it more than 1?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I did it right either. Is this what anybody else got?
I got that.
Okay.
I got it.
So you just must have typed something in wrong.
Yeah.
You got yelled at.
I got 300,000.
300,000. Yeah, off by just a little bit. All right, so now to find A, how do I solve for A? Good, inverse cosine. So inverse cosine, inverse cosine. So I'll do second cosine, my answer, 41.8. All right, so angle A is about 41.8 degrees. So angle A is 41.8. 41.8. All right, once you finish by solving the triangle, we have 2 more angles to find. Find B and find C. Why don't you find C next? So are you using the law of cosines or the law of sines? I bet you were doing cosine, or maybe you did know how to do sine.
I was doing sines.
So you could do either here, but law of sines I think is easier. So you could do law of sines, or you could use law of cosines to find C. All right, so we have sine of C over 22 equals the sine of 41.8 over 20. So we can cross multiply 22 times that divided by, so sine of C equals 22 sine of 41.8 divided by 20. Inverse sine, so C is, I got 47.15. Is that what you're getting? Good, so 47.15. And you could do law of sines, you could do law of cosines, or just do 180 minus those two to find B. Okay, so once you use law of cosines once, you could just start doing like law of sines or triangle sum theorem to find the rest of the triangle. Questions on that? I could make up another one, but this class seems to be getting it pretty well. So there's two other types of problems in this section. They both involve area. So we need to find the area of a side angle side triangle. And there's a formula for that. Please focus. So if I have so the area is going to be 1/2 B times C times the sine of A. So area of a side angle side triangle is going to be 1/2 one like adjacent side times the other one times the sine of the interior angle. So if my triangle was 20 degrees, this is 7, this is 10, we can find the area of that triangle. It'd be 1/2 7 times 10 times the sine of 20. And then you just figure it out. It'd be unit squared. So that's pretty straightforward. You just have to remember what the formula is. So I guess we could do it if we want to. So it is 0.5 times 7 times 10 times sine and 11.97 or so. So 11.97 units squared. Okay, so that's with a side angle side situation. And then the last thing I'll talk about today is an area of a side, and that's called Heron's formula. All right, so if I have like C, A, C. If I wanted to figure out the area of that, the area is the square root of S times S minus A times S minus B times S minus C. All right, what's the obvious question? Maybe you're writing down. What question do you have after seeing that formula? Nobody? Huh?
Why is there a root?
Why is there a root? Well, that would be a question worth answering. Do we know what A, B, and C are? Yeah, it's on your triangle. We don't know what S is. Okay, so S is, it's almost like the average, but it's not quite, because we have to add up the three sides, but we don't divide by 3, we divide by 2. So S is A plus B plus C divided by 2. So, here's my example. We've got a side. Let's say this is 4, this is 6, and this is, I'll say 8. All right, so first thing we have to do is find out what S is. S is 4 plus 6 plus 8 divided by 2. So we have S. Now we can find the area. The area is the square root of S times 9 minus 4, 9 minus 6, 9 minus 8. So it's the square root of 9 times 5 times 3 times 1. So 15 times 9. Square root of 135, and we get our answers 11.6. Okay, so that's how you find the area of a side. Find S, and then just remember the formula. So just like the law of sines, there's going to be plenty of story problems where you have to, from the information, draw a sketch, and then once you have the sketch, It's a matter of just remembering the formulas and doing the math correct. Questions?